It seems surreal to me, you know, but
It's like a dream, like Charlie Moore said.
yeah, I think so, maybe, you know, but there's a lot we can talk about. I'm really glad you get here.
Same.
Yeah.
We're honored to be here.
No, it's my pleasure, yeah. And bear with me, you know a lot more about it than I do, but I'm going to be learning, so bear with my ignorance, as it were. Yeah, welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program two gentlemen that are associated with an organization, and it's called the American Jewish Christian Muslim Alliance. And we're going to be learning about that alliance and about some of the matters as relates to, well, let's say Muslims, and particularly maybe American Muslims, as it were, and some of the bad things that are going on in that regard. And it's a pleasure to welcome to the program. And if I may, on my far left is, and forgive me, it's Dr. Wasim.Khan.
Absolutely.
Dr. Wasim.Khan, medical doctor. He's from India, as I understand. And Dr. Khan, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure. And on my immediate left is Moin, is that it? Moin Ansari. And he's co-founder, if I'm not mistaken, of the organization. And gentlemen, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks.
Maybe you could share with me, we want to talk about the alliance, but maybe each of you could take a minute or two to share your own personal background, because the people will be, in a sense, they like to know who it is we're talking to. But maybe share a little of your own background, and then we can get into a conversation about the current state of affairs vis-a-vis the Muslim community, which is growing rapidly here in America, and the implications of that in terms of the broader developments around the world. But could you share a little of your own background, each of you, please? Perhaps you first, Moin?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say shalom aleichem, salam alaikum, peace and hello to our audience and everybody else, and to you. I came here as a student 25 years ago, and like my parents and their parents, they'd gone to England to study, and then they went back to India and Pakistan. I decided to stay here, so I'm not a political or economic refugee. I'm in the United States, and I can say the same for Dr. Wasim Khan. As a lot of people, we're here in America because we like it here. And this is our land, just like it is a land of any other. I have 3 bachelor's degrees, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and International Relations, and then an engineering background in marine engineering and industrial engineering. Then I did my postgraduate work from UCLA. Then I did an MBA from Cal State.
What was the postgraduate work?
In manufacturing engineering.
Okay, good.
Manufacturing
Yeah. I know
engineering.
you've had some involvement with internet and
And yes, I'm a
development.
computer consultant, and you know, we worked for the past 20 years, 15 years at least. I worked in technology in various areas, in internet development, web development, software development. And currently I have a business that is computer consulting and training in business, technology, and medical sciences.
Very important field. I mean, it's just going by like gangbusters, as we say. It's growing so quickly. And if you could, Dr. Khan, could you share a little of your background? You're originally from, your people are from Pakistan.
My parents are from Pakistan.
Lahore?
That's right. I was born in Lahore. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good. And you, Doctor? Please?
I was born in India, and I was trained for my basic medical degree in India, and then I had some postgraduate education here in Boston. I did several years doing what I was always a passion of mine, doing clinical research, clinical trials.
In what area?
I'm more of a methodologist, so I worked on most of the major therapeutic areas like cardiology, cancer, and so forth, starting at Harvard. I had some friends over there, and they said, if you want to do clinical research, this is the place to do.
Yeah,
So, and I would never regret, you know, leaving Boston was to come to New Jersey was like a near-death experience, you know, because I just couldn't imagine being anywhere else. You know, the Boston was home, really, as if you was born again there. And it has such a great intellectual climate.
Yes.
So much diversity, because it's a city of colleges and universities, you know, everything from MIT and Harvard to Northeastern University, Boston College. And it's this incredible history, that the cradle of democracy in the United States was so inspiring. And that's one city, you know, I guess anybody in the world should live for some years.
Yes,
you
that's
know,
right. I agree with you. That's a very exciting part of a lot of intellect. And again, you're in a field that's really burgeoning. I mean, biotechnology.
Absolutely.
And we could talk to you about stem cell research and some of these kind of things. Mr. Reagan's going to address the Democratic Convention
Yes,
apparently
yes, we
on
heard
that
that.
issue.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's a big issue.
Iran
I think,
is.
you know.
I think I am very much on. Iran is on target. You know,
Yeah,
I think
it seems,
completely
you know, it
independent
seems
more.
like almost an inevitable thing, and it's a cultural lag and that kind of thing. But we have other matters, and
Sure,
gentlemen,
sure,
welcome
sure,
very,
yeah,
very
sure.
much.
Thank you
and
very much.
I wonder if you could then, from that basic introduction and so forth, you're both intellectually oriented and grounded here in the United States, so you're citizens of the United
Absolutely,
States and so
absolutely.
forth. And I would tend to say that I think from a First Amendment and other kind of constitutional rights, there have been a considerable erosion of the rights of many of the people of the United States from our First Amendment principles and so forth, but it's been particularly egregious in terms of the Muslim community. I do believe I'm correct in that. And you have an organization, again, American Jewish Christian Muslim Alliance. Share something about the alliance. When it got started, what's it involved, and then maybe we could talk about some of the state of affairs for the Muslim people here in North America, and then with implications that means as far as the larger Ummah and the larger Muslim community around the world. But could you share the institution itself?
Sure. Both Dr. Wasim and I have been involved in interfaith efforts for a very long time. When I first came here as a student, I went to Assembly of God. Went to church because it was not from a religious perspective, but from a social event. And I learned that the religions were very similar. And I let Dr. Khan talk about his experiences in Boston. But like he says so eloquently, I learned about Moses and Jesus from my mother. It wasn't because of some interfaith event. We learned about...
You mean as a youngster?
As a young man.
Yeah, right.
That's my mom told us
in
about...
Pakistan?
In Pakistan,
yeah,
yes.
okay,
yes.
you did, okay, yeah.
Because
part of a general educational understanding of the world.
And Noah and Adam and Abraham and Moses and Jesus are also prophets of Islam.
They're all of the book?
Yeah, they're all people of the book. So we didn't grow up, and American culture was ingrained in us on television and comics. I read Newsweek when I was a young man. And
can't get away from it. It's everywhere, isn't it? I mean, that's something to keep in mind, yeah.
And so we were, at that time in the 60s and 70s when we were growing up, we had American bases in Pakistan. I had my first hamburger at the U.S. base, which was U.S. territory in Peshawar. That's where the U-2s used to take off from.
Oh, really?
Against the USSR. Pakistan was a bulwark.
Peshawar is way up in the northwest province.
In the northwest province, yeah.
Right.
Badabir Air Force
A lot
Base.
of rifles in there.
The Wild Wild West.
What is the group that's up there? The
Pashtuns.
Pashtuns.
The
They're very, very,
Khans.
yeah. What an interesting country and area of that
Very
world that
fascinating.
is. Yeah, okay.
Very
But
fascinating.
you were aware of American culture and that, and cotton to it, as we say. You liked it.
I
You
loved
liked
it.
the
I grew
idea
up.
from afar, right?
I went to Catholic school. I went to St. Mary's.
But you were Muslim.
I'm a Muslim,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
But I did go to Catholic school. And they didn't force any religion on us. We learned Islamiyat. And so most of Pakistan at that time, this is the naive era, when GIs would throw candies at us when they went by to the bases. And
You're talking, if I may, you're talking before the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
Before the Soviet invasion of
which
Afghanistan,
really changed things, right?
And
And
then
the general feeling, and if I may, you've come off the Raj. You've come off British colonialism.
yes,
There's been a big fight with Gandhi and having the British retreat after the Second
Yeah,
War.
yeah.
That was all part of the dynamic, and I wonder if you could just share with us, you had good feelings toward the American people?
Absolutely,
American
absolutely.
culture. And do you think that was characteristic of the people of the subcontinent, or of South Asia, that there were generally good feelings when they thought about the United States of America let's say the West?
Yeah, let me say a couple of words, then I'll
Yeah,
Dr.
sure, by all
Khan. I don't
means.
want to hog the time. Absolutely. The Green Revolution, some of the
Borlaug?
basic...
Norman Borlaug?
I'm not familiar with that, but
Oh,
PL
okay.
480 programs
Uh-huh.
and the agriculture, Erie rice, there would have been a billion people starving if it weren't for American aid and fertilizer and PL 480 programs and educational programs. And in Pakistan, at least, because we were allied in Seato and CENTO with
Yes.
the United States, so there was a lot of wonderful feelings. That, and even during the 80s, it passed Cold War because the Mujahideen, as Charlie Wilson says in his book, and Cooley's that talks about, and Reagan, they invited these guys to the White House, and the current President Bush.
The Mujahideen they invited, yeah.
Yeah, they
After
invited.
79.
After 79.
Right.
And for 10 years, American aid and American flags were flying very high and very, very popular in the United States. There was absolutely no animosity or ill feeling towards the U.S., especially in Pakistan.
Okay,
And I'll let you talk about India.
and for India too,
sure,
because it's all one. And it was horrendously difficult. The because you've got, I think in India now, you've got something on the order of 150 million Muslims. And there's been that conflict. It was a difficult thing, the birth of Pakistan after the Raj. It was difficult.
Yes,
It was a huge migration of people, dislocation and that sort of thing was difficult. Was there a residue of, what was the residue, what,
There was a residue.
no, about the British, about the Raj, about the colonial experience that had been suffered. We had the mutiny of 1857 and we had that. What was the general attitude toward the West by the people of South Asia, would you say, following the Second War and the decades after?
Well, I would say I was born after the
Yes, I
independence,
understand.
so I did not have to go through some of the passionate nationalism of colonial period, understandably. So, but I've seen the attitude of my father, for instance. We were very pro-Western. Very, very, like considering the contribution of even the colonial times. There were people who were looking at the positive. And English was retained as a major lingua franca. That everybody could talk to. So
everywhere in the
14
world.
major languages. Absolutely. And now it's global language. So that was. And we used to choose between the British movies and the English movie, the Western movies, American movies, and we had to get our ears because we were coming from the British colonial periods. Our pronunciation is it ways or a was?
Yeah.
So it was we had to make an effort as growing up as teenagers. G's was the Wrangler and Levi was the two major exports.
And they have such a great sense of humor. I'm sorry, both Pakistan and India, they have such a great sense of humor. And you had the movies of Bollywood.
So we would seek the American movies, even though it was often the accent. It used to it took some getting used to.
Well, my name is John Wayne.
Absolutely, John.
Yeah, right.
All those words. So as teenagers, I think they were experienced pretty much the same, as probably would have been somebody growing up in a U.S. High school somewhere or a college junior. So that was the kind of environment. When I came to United States, my favorite authors, guess who were these? Was John Irving, Tom Robbins, people like these, who, and I'll sit and I was talking to somebody, I would expect them to have read them all, and if not, I would be disappointed that how come they have not.
You mean people here in the United States?
Here in the United
you were
States,
more well read than they.
Well,
right?
Well, I would not like to claim that.
Very likely.
But it was very interesting.
Yeah.
So that was, it was absolutely like coming to the faith issue, like Moin was saying, the stories of Moses and Jesus, like Jesus is mentioned more often in Quran, and so is Moses, that is something like 88 times, and Jesus something like 27 times. Muhammad is mentioned only 2 or 3 times, And yesterday I was actually reviewing the Quran, some of these kinds, just for our organization's, exchange of information purposes, And I was, there is more. Jesus mentioned as the Word and the Spirit of God. Actually, I have a book which is called Muslim Jesus, which refers repeatedly, Muslims are addressing, or the disciples are addressing to Jesus Christ as the Word and the Spirit and the Word, Spirit and the Word. So what do you have to say about this or that and the problem? Unbelievable, we have, and again, like I was talking to in one of the synagogues about this matter, that how it was not about an interfaith issue. This was part of our education, the feet of our mothers. It was part of our faith. I like to say that Islam is a synthesis of Judaism and Christianity. So and there is nothing more. And in fact, Dr. Robert Crane, who's a converted Muslim, who actually
Mr. Chaudhry.
We work with all of them.
Crane is really something else. He's great.
He is a. He's a great scholar on Islam, and he's also a Harvard JD. So coming from him, in one of the lectures at Harvard, it was stunning for me, and then I did for a little bit further research that the founding fathers were either somehow influenced by Islam or somehow they might have read Quran and so forth, And one of the things then I went about to research and I found out was a book called The Living the Son of Light, or Ibn Haytham, who was a Spanish Andalusian period. Ibn Tufal is very well. Ibn Tufal actually was a teacher of Averroes, who was highly regarded even by Goethe.
Philosopher?
Averroes, philosopher. He was a Muslim philosopher.
Okay, right, okay.
And he and like Ghazali have actually influenced Thomas Aquinas.
And
There
Moses
are multiple references in
Well,
Moses
it was
Maimonides, who was considered second Moses,
I think the Muslims had a great deal with bridging back to the classics.
Right,
For the whole
absolutely,
world.
absolutely.
I mean, it could have been lost forever, the classics, but they
yes,
did.
absolutely.
I wonder, you were from India, and you were Muslim.
Right,
we speak here of the American Jewish, Christian, Muslim. We don't say Hindu. And we've got, was it Kipling who said, East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall
in
meet?
India they have met, I would say, and I think they have met in America too.
Yeah,
So-
maybe.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's the thing.
yeah.
But was there a conflict in terms of the Muslim? I mean, the Hindu part. I mean, because you got the vast majority are Hindu in. And so, what about that interface?
The
as it
minority
were?
experience.
And you had the
of,
Mughals
yeah,
had
the
been
Muslim-
there at the Taj Mahal and that major period of great growth, and so the two cultures were meeting there in a very real sense of a global cultures meeting, East and West. And what about that dialectic, as it were, in terms of you would have been on the spot? We here haven't had that much experience with the East. We're solidly of the monotheistic Western tradition, but could you maybe just address yourself to that as part of an ecumenical interfaith kind of thing with other than the monotheistic tradition?
Absolutely.
Well, let me try, then I'll
okay,
take a stab at it. I think he's more steeped. My parents originally are from India. In fact, they belong to the same town where our ancestors lived for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And then during the partition or independence period, they migrated over.
It was very
It's a difficult time period. So my parents are actually, the reason we started doing this was because the monotheistic religion and the Abrahamic religions, as we call them today, have more of a common root, and part of the issues that Muslims are dealing with essentially are with Jews and Christians here in America. We have another organization that we work with, which is called People of Peace and Justice, with Dave Mortensen and Dale McDougall and a whole bunch of others with the Presbyterian Church, and we're also working with Unitarians, and we have Buddhists and other people. And
getting over the East.
Getting over the East, and I am in the process of getting on the Morris County Human Relations Commission. We've had some conversation, and there are Hindus there too. And I've worked with Hindus, and I'll let Dr. Wasim-Khan talk about it because he's more steeped into the...
Well, I mean, here in New York City, where else in the world? We had our first demonstration.
Do you like New York?
Oh, love it.
I love America,
Absolutely.
and I think New York is just the
microcosm.
You walk on 8th
Absolutely.
Avenue, you don't
the
hear
world.
English. It's
It's
wonderful.
a
And you
center
got
of
the
universe.
US.
No, I actually
agree with
believe
you.
in
It's
that.
a great town.
Because it's a melting pot where the people with their highest aspirations, they come here and they come together and they congeal and they create new realities which become phenomena which other people consider as is incredible. Here in here in New York City, right here in Midtown, a couple of blocks from here, I had we had our first demonstration of our group when Indian Prime Minister came here, Mr. Bajpayee, the first time,
Bajpayee.
And just
he was Hindu,
he was
fundamentalist
Hindu.
party, I think.
Yes, sir.
It's not you have that stuff of trouble in Rajasthan.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of
My
problems.
grandfather was in an election duel with him 30, 40 years ago.
Oh,
and
really?
he defeated
For
him.
Prime Minister?
No, for one of the local contests, and he
right,
defeated Mr. Vajpayee.
No kidding.
Very long time ago.
Really?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
But India's heart is in a liberal democracy. It was really its success, and other than it having its own, like if you go back to Akbar, who was the great grandfather of Shah Jahan, who built, he created the first ecumenical movement, where Jesuit priests, from coming from Portugal to I guess there were some British or English missionaries also at the time with Hindus and with Muslims, and what he called Deen Ilahi, which was the first ecumenical concept. His was the first secular government before I guess this concept was nearly 500 years back.
Before the Catholic Church.
Absolutely. And I just returning to that theme of Ibn Tufal's, idea of the whole notion of that somehow the religions are over in periods before the modern times have been some kind of a cloistered entities, though or something separated from the reality. there was an interflow of an influence throughout the ages, you know, between Christians and Hindus and Muslims, and in fact, one of the earliest Christians came to India. They're called Thamomas, you know, in South. You know, St. Thomas's a disciple. They said St. Thomas went to India, and there are people who believe Jesus Christ came to India, you know, and to Kashmir and so forth. You know.
Kashmir.
So, yes, yes.
There's a grave in Kashmir.
Some people think that's the Garden of Eden. It's pretty
Yes,
Shangri-La.
I understand,
absolutely.
yeah. And it's a very much of a hot spot now still. We don't want to lose track of that. That's a huge matter. But that's a very big development, and it's a crossroads of the world in a very real sense. So we could go on. But what about the organization here? This is the American Jewish, you know, and there are cultural roots. One should understand, I saw on C-SPAN yesterday, I was going to try and bring in a woman talking, that there are many cultural roots that even precede the religious people, precede and carry through from thousands of years ago. And that we have these memes, or we have these ideas that are cultural, that aren't necessarily rooted in the stricture, the dictum of the religious faith themselves. And some of the things that are misunderstood, and there's a great deal of misunderstanding now. Mr. Huntington's talking about a clash of civilizations, and all of this is very serious. Some of those attitudes and so forth that are stereotype, and when you get into that kind of a thing, you get stereotyping, are cultural things that relate to different kinds of ideas that go back thousands of years that aren't related to the religion.
Absolutely.
I
would like to understand. I would like to connect this whole my India experience, and in what ways it might be relevant to our condition here in the United States, or our future, you know, here. Future of all of us as Americans. You know. I mean, India has been a great melting pot of because somebody's described it like the pocket of a billiard table, you know, because it is like this hanging in the Indian Ocean, and people have been coming and they have been getting assimilated over time, you know. So Islam in India is not the same as far as Islam in Egypt or some other place.
Yeah,
you know.
it's not Arab. People confuse
but
that.
the same way that Hinduism in Indonesia is not the same as Hinduism in Nepal or some other. So the Christianity in America has not been the same as Christianity in Switzerland or some other place. You know. So the influences the local, like which precede the religious experience or canonization as the religions have attempted to in times when we did not have laws, we did not have judges and rulers and educational institutions and so forth, have really contributed. For instance, when we use word college, word college comes from the Islamic word kulliyat, which was the name of the kulliyat, or the colleges of higher learning.
Really?
Higher learning.
I'm learning.
Collegiate.
I'm learning.
Collegiate is actually the mispronunciation of the Latinization of the word kulliyat, collegiate, colleges. So now, no wonder Oxford University and Bologna and Paris University were modeling out of the Al-Azhar University in Egypt. You know.
I think the real true first university was the library at Alexandria. I think.
Alexandria, absolutely.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Islam that gave us the zero.
Yes.
And algebra, among a couple of things.
Arabic numeral and so forth. But these are the ideas. Algorithm is again an Arabic word. It comes from the Al-Khwarizmi, who was the inventor of the
alchemia, chemistry, algebra.
These are the alcohol is actually an Arabic word. You know, much as Muslims are supposed to be frowning upon alcohol and so forth. But there have been philosophers like Avicenna and others who've been enjoying their drink, and it's a debatable issue. But the experience of diversity and the success of the liberal democracy in Britain, I think, was the greatest achievement of the recent times, you know. And it is incredible that even in a country like India, with the diversity a lot more desperate, you know, and often it seems like the ideologies have been at the loggerheads, you know, but it has been much more recent phenomena. And I suppose our effort is draw out of that complexity that it has been possible
You've had
for
a lot
people
of
like us to flourish there, and now we have come here because we feel a little bit more comfortable.
You maybe could teach us something about living in diversity, because there's been so, you got the languages, all kinds of languages. You got the Dravidian, you got the you know, the Vedic and Indo-European. So you know from diversity, as they say, in there. And you could teach us something that would be relevant to us, because there are prejudices now being directed in the wake, perhaps, of 9/11 or from whatever, the clash in the Middle East, that sort of thing. There are real serious problems now that are emerging that impact particularly strongly on people of the Muslim faith here in North America, and you're directing your attention at that?
Towards
the
yeah,
stereotypes and the prejudices that are being delivered down upon your community most directly? Maybe we could address some of those? Or
We've been to about 30 churches and synagogues right now in the New Jersey area. And our message is of tolerance. And one of the things that we talk about when we go to a synagogue or church is that Muslims have been here since not 1980 or 1970 or 1960, but even before Columbus came. We've got documents and information, and Columbus sailed from an area that was predominantly Muslim at that time.
Well,
so some of the sailors and some of the Cordoba and all these places at that time, it was Muslim Spain. In fact, Ferdinand and Isabel went.
Columbus and the expulsion of the Jews.
And then the expulsion
was
of the
same
Jews
year.
was, yeah, it's the same year.
But what would
Actually,
they, I know, I've had spent a lot of time in Libya,
Yeah.
and Muammar Gaddafi, I happen to like him. I think he's got a great deal to say. But they have, and talked with the man who wrote the book, they came before Columbus, they think it was from Libya. It would have been what is more or less Libya now, that there were crossings of the Atlantic. But
the king of Mali, we've got some document. In fact, Columbus used some Arabic maps at the time. So some of the Cherokee Indians were Muslims. They were early converts to Islam. In fact, the last Confederate general of the Cherokee nation that Dr. Crane sort of talks about so much, his name was Ramadan. And then the African Americans were 25% of them were Muslim, and even today the blacks are about 25% Muslim.
well, how much is that as a Nation of Islam? And
Well, Nation of
and,
Islam is a
you know,
small, tiny minority
It is,
of the
Okay.
3 to 5 million of the actual black Muslims, African Americans. So Muslims have been part and parcel of the United States of America and America, from the tips of Brazil and Chile and the West Indies and the United States, more so than European Americans have been. So it's not Johnny come lately, we just didn't arrive. Today there are between 6 to 16 million Muslims. According to New York Times, there are about 7 million Muslims. According to Chicago Tribune, there are about 16 million Muslims in the United States.
That's a big differential. What's the
Yeah,
difference? It's not clear.
well, the Consensus Bureau doesn't tabulate, and Muslims like Jews or Christians are not all registered with a church or a synagogue or a mosque. So we don't have clear numbers, but let's kind
What's your best guess?
10 million. 10 million is a good guess.
Okay.
And
That's a lot of people.
that's a lot of people. And if you read Congress Finley, he talks about that Muslims had a major impact on the last election, and in this election and next election for sure, there'll be more voting blocks and enfranchisement. But
I think I trust that Zogby poll more than any
more than anybody.
I think he's had more on than anybody else.
But one of the main themes of our effort and our conversation, and Dr. Wasim has an ocean of knowledge in this, is that the hordes are coming, the hordes are coming, the hordes are coming. I mean, Americans, our fellow Americans, we don't need to be afraid of the hordes are coming. The hordes are not coming. They've always been here. Muslims have always been part
The
and
hordes
parcel.
being
The Muslims, the clash of
Muslims.
civilization. There's one human civilization on this planet.
Right.
We've got one planet. It's a small planet. A lot of people. We have one human civilization. There's no
Amen.
question of a whole bunch of civilization. The torch. The Greeks, the classic case of the East and the West, you know, all this stuff about Troy and all that. Troy was in Turkey. That was the big clash of the East and West. That was the World Trade Center at that time, according to the PBS documentary. And the Greek civilization, they learned their language from the Phoenicians. That's the Phoenician alphabet. And
Thomas McEvely says that there was contact from India to Greece
at that time.
Platonic Greece.
Yes,
There was a flow back and forth, and that much of that came from the East, not from the West.
There's a
as
whole bunch
some of the neocons like to think.
there's a large body of knowledge that has tracked the Gandhara civilization, seals up to Hawaii, and I've got some books. So there's a book called Star Trek, and a whole bunch of stuff. So this civilization, the torch of civilization, so within the Greek civilization itself, there was Turkish influence east, and Carthage, and from North Africa was part of the Roman Empire, and the Romans used the Roman numerals, which were actually Etruscans. Southern Italy used to be Muslim. Spain, all of us used to be Muslim. All of North Africa.
The Palatine Church was built by the Arabs because Frederick Frederick the Great, considered the first Renaissance man, was actually brought up by Arabs because he was an
And
orphan.
he spoke Arabic and used Arabic dress during the Renaissance.
And his
So this,
church was
this
So there's cultural differences, but we're all one.
all the time.
That's
Yeah,
something that really should be understood
absolutely.
because, and the science is giving that, isn't it? It gets this incredible mitochondrial DNA studies about how we all come out of Africa 200,000 years ago. We're all of one.
we are
You
the
know,
same
and we got these
civilization.
differences,
There's very little
cultural
difference in genome, human genome, the
Yeah.
differences between the races. You know,
Yeah.
my
That's your
genetic
field.
material and yours is absolutely like to be the same.
Yeah. But we do have, in the current geopolitical situation, and everything, a real problem.
Right,
Don't
there
we?
is. Yes.
And we had this 9/11, and we have this clash, and we have. I was talking to you earlier about the attitude of the people of South Asia towards the United States. It seems to me that I don't know. You can set me straight or what you think, but the good feeling toward the United States. We came out of the Second World War. We hadn't had a colonial experience or any of that sort of thing. We were in very good stead as far as the people of the world. And it seems to me, as an American whose people have been here a long time, that sort of thing, that we have squandered a great deal of that in terms of the masses of the people of the world. I saw King Abdul, what's his name?
Jordan.
In
Jordan.
Jordan.
Jordan Abdullah.
And he was talking, and they had a thing, how many people are in favor of the United States? It used to be something like 40 or something, now down below